Well, hello there, Space Monkeys. Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm Robert Durden, your friendly neighborhood political shit talker. And this episode is episode 9382 of Joe Biden Sucks, and here's why. Seriously, though, I think I do like a daily episode about why Joe Biden sucks bad. So let's talk again about what he's doing. I read this article a couple of days ago, and I decided to do the episode today because as of tomorrow, it's official, Joe Biden is allowing the unemployment benefits for millions to expire. This comes right on the tail of the Supreme Court shooting down the eviction moratorium. But remember, guys, we talked about this on the show. The Democrats, Joe Biden and his Congress, they have a majority. They were given an extra chance to extend the moratorium by law by the Supreme Court earlier this year. And they knew it was going to expire, and they didn't do shit about it. And that includes the squad. And that also includes them in their fake-ass protest that was out on the steps of Congress. All of the Democrats worked and played their part together to make sure that we got a shitty-ass, means-tested eviction moratorium that we knew was going to get shot down by the Supreme Court. So, what is effectively happening here, guys? It means that Joe Biden, not Donald Trump, Joe Biden, is about to force a bunch of people to go back to work by cutting off their unemployment, and also getting rid of the eviction moratorium, which is going to allow millions to be put on the streets. And he's doing this right as Delta is ramping up and COVID is worse than it has ever been under Donald Trump. It's worse than it's ever been in the United States ever. The reason you probably don't know about it is because mainstream media is still running so much interference and killing all of the actual stories about what COVID's doing right now. The only time they ever focus on, like the Democratic mainstream media, the only time they ever focus on anything due to COVID, it's like talking about Ron DeSantis and how he's flubbing it in Florida. No, the entire nation is flubbing it. Florida is particularly flubbing it, but COVID's going to be so fucking bad this winter, guys. It's going to be so fucking bad. And Joe Biden's here like, get the fuck out the door, peons. Go work in the snow. You know, there's not enough vaccinations out there, or not enough of a high enough vaccination rate for you to guys to be safe out there when you work. We're not going to do a mask mandate. There were sheep being led to slaughter by the Democrats right now. So I'm going to read to you here very briefly from Common Dreams. Jake Johnson has been covering this for weeks. He wrote an article 2 weeks ago about this, warning that this was going to be allowed by the Biden administration, and he nails it. So I'm going to read that to you. And then we're going to talk about why Joe Biden is just as bad, if not worse, than Donald Trump on this. Millions of jobless workers are set to lose critical unemployment benefits in 72 hours. Now, that's not true. It's 24 hours. And neither Congress nor Biden administration seems prepared to do anything about it. Despite the ongoing threat posed by the highly transmissible Delta variant of COVID, the White House and Democratic lawmakers have provided no indication that they plan to prevent several pandemic-related unemployment programs from expiring on September 6th, which, in a cruel irony, happens to be Labor Day. That's nice of him, too. The consequences of government inaction in the face of what one analyst recently described as the, quote, largest cutoff of unemployment benefits in the history of the U.S. could be massive both for those directly impacted by the cuts and the still ailing U.S. economy. As Matt Brunig of the People's Policy Project noted Thursday, the Labor Department's latest weekly unemployment insurance UI report shows that 9.2 million people are currently receiving benefits from either the PEUC, which is the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation Fund, or the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, which were implemented last year to extend the duration of jobless aid and provide assistance to those who are typically ineligible for UI, such as gig workers. Quote, according to the Census Household Pulse survey, the average household that is receiving UI benefits has 3.8 members in it. This means that around 35 million people, or 10% of the U.S. population, live in households that are scheduled to lose unemployment income. These are not small cuts either, Brunig continued. Based on what happened in the states that already cut these benefits, we know that around half of those on UI will see their benefits drop to zero, while the remaining half will see their benefits cut by $300 a week, which is equivalent to $15,200 per year. Those formerly on UI will also cut their spending by about $145 per week, which is about $7,500 annually, which will have negative effects on the revenue and employment of the businesses that they patronize. So an argument from economics, meaning these businesses are going to go under when you cut unemployment benefits. They don't get better. And yeah, you know, the Republicans will always make the argument that unemployment will de-incentivize work. That's not true. But during COVID, the point is to try to de-incentivize people from going out to work. We should be doing a lockdown and paying people to stay home to get ahead of it. But Biden's doing exactly the opposite thing, which is basically saying, yeah, we're not going to let you stay home. We're not going to pay you to stay home at all. We're going to do exactly the opposite of what we should do in the face of a public health crisis like a COVID pandemic. We're going to kick you out into the streets, and we're going to kick you out of your houses and make you go back to them jobs. That's what Biden's doing right now. That never happened under Trump. Oh, thank a Biden voter today, guys. Remember, they said vote blue no matter who and we'll push Biden left. Now Biden's letting millions of people go homeless. He's going to more than triple the homeless population in the country. And that's at the beginning of October, when the eviction moratorium ends, the targeted one that he got. And then he's going to make a whole bunch of people go back to work right as the weather's getting colder and the numbers of Delta variant COVID are off the charts. He's going to kill hundreds of thousands of people. That's what you get for voting Democrats. Remember, guys, they're so much better than Republicans. Anyway. Even amid such dire warnings, the possibility of a UI extension has been virtually absent from discussions on Capitol Hill as Democratic lawmakers work to assemble a $3.5 trillion spending package aimed at achieving a range of long-standing policy goals from major climate investments to Medicare expansion. Quote, the Biden administration has not made it a priority, and outside of Ron Wyden, you haven't heard too many people in the Senate be willing to push on that, said Andrew Stetner, senior fellow at Century Foundation, and he told Vox, referring to the Democratic senator from Oregon, a key architect of the soon-to-expire UI programs. Quote, it doesn't seem like right now there would even be 50 votes in the Senate for an extension, Stetner observed. Last week, Labor Secretary Marty Walsh and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said that President Joe Biden believes that it is, quote, appropriate for the $300 per week federal UI boost to expire as scheduled. 26 states, each led by a Republican governor except for Louisiana, have already ended the emergency UI aid, and the Biden administration did not stop them. Subsequent research has vindicated economists who warned that, contrary to the claims and predictions of Republican leaders, ending the benefits prematurely would do little to boost hiring. A Wall Street Journal analysis released Wednesday found that, quote, states that ended enhanced federal job employment benefits have so far seen about the same job growth as states that continued offering the pandemic-related extra aid. Like I said earlier, we know this. It's a Republican straw man. They use that argument all the time, that it de-incentivizes work if you give people money to stay home on unemployment. Not true. We've studied this. It's a fable. While Republicans have insisted that the emergency UI programs are dissuading people from returning to the workforce, analysts have pointed to the myriad of other factors at play, including lack of childcare and pandemic-related health concerns. Dr. Rakeen Mabood, the chief economist at the Groundwork Collaborative, warned in a statement earlier this week that, quote, amid increasing uncertainty in the trajectory of the pandemic, Monday's unemployment cliff could not come at a worse time. Millions will suffer as they lose this critical source of income, and the loss of spending will suppress job growth, setting us back yet again in our efforts for an inclusive and equitable recovery. Painful enough in itself, the benefit cutoff will come just days after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the Biden administration's nationwide eviction moratorium, putting millions of people at imminent risk of losing their homes amid a deadly pandemic. The U.S. is currently averaging around 164,000 new coronavirus infections and 1,500 deaths per day. Now, I've been tracking coronavirus since it started. The numbers have never been worse than this. Never under Trump were they this bad. Yet you don't see it in the mainstream media because 2 out of the 3 mainstream media outlets are running interference on Joe Biden. And Fox doesn't blow the COVID pandemic out of proportion and call Biden out on his horrible job with the COVID pandemic as much as they should, because a lot of their viewers barely even believe that COVID's real. They're not really taking it seriously anyway. That doesn't get them ratings. So the reason that Biden has better public relations on COVID has to do with that when Trump was in office and fumbling COVID, CNN and MSNBC did everything they could to make sure they highlighted how bad Trump was doing, which he was doing bad. But they're not doing that same thing with Biden. They're bought and paid for by the Democratic Party. So, no, they want to make sure Biden gets interference run for him when it comes to COVID. But it's as bad now as it's ever been, as far as the numbers go. And it's about to get way fucking worse, because this time of year, it's really hard for COVID to spread because it's warm outside. Remember, guys, the worst spike last year came right around like October, right as soon as stuff started to get pretty cold. So beginning of October, Delta is masquerading its way, cutting unvaccinated people down in droves across this nation right now. And Joe Biden's like, all right, we're going to kick a whole bunch of you guys out of your houses, and we're also going to cut off unemployment to force you guys to go back to your jobs so you have no choice. So, lastly, I like to come full circle. I told you we'd talk about this. This is way worse fumbling of the COVID pandemic than it was under Trump. Sorry. Now, some of that is attributed to, obviously, Delta variant is more transmissible. But listen, I've been saying this since the beginning, which is I started this show right when Joe Biden took office. If you don't get people vaccinated, 7 out of 10 in this country, and we can't bank on herd immunity to help get COVID in the corner, which you're never going to do, it's a fool's errand. We need to start considering doing lockdowns or mask mandates and paying people to stay home, sending testing kits to their houses and masks made using the Defense Production Act, like Bernie said, to make sure everybody has a good mask that's nice and comfortable so they don't have to spend their own money on it. And you find out who's sick, you pay people to stay home, you isolate the people that are sick, make sure they have the health care that they need, and we emerge from a lockdown with COVID under control. But Joe Biden, he's not a uniting entity. The Republicans hate Joe Biden, the lefties hate Joe Biden. Everybody fucking hates Joe Biden except for the boutique left, the rich liberals in this country. So you're never going to get a uniting force around him. So you're never going to get people to get vaccinated to the extent that they need to be vaccinated for us to have herd immunity. It was never going to work. So they spent their entire time on a fool's errand. They've had plenty of time to prepare for other things, but no. Remember, guys, it's a big club and you ain't in it. And all of these people are just rich elitist pricks that don't give a fuck about the peons' lives. The only difference between Trump and Biden is that Biden wears a blue tie to work. The numbers for COVID are about the same under both of them, and it's about to be way worse under Biden. Way worse. 400,000 people died under Trump for about the first year of COVID while he was in office, and it's about to be about the same with Biden. It could be possibly way worse, especially if they actually do let the eviction moratorium expire, and if they in fact do not extend the unemployment benefits. If they force a whole bunch of people to go back to work, especially unvaccinated people are going to just die in legions this winter. And like I said, guys, it's the worst it's ever been right now, and this is like the hibernation period for COVID when it comes to the yearly cycle. When it's really hot outside, generally viruses have a hard time spreading. That's why you saw the numbers drop so much during last summer, even though they peaked, in March of last year, right? And then they dipped when the weather got warm again. That's true. That happens. Viruses have a hard time spreading during the summer. It's as hot as it's going to be right now, or right at the end of August. Now it's the beginning of September. It's going to get really cold really fast. Delta's already got its hooks in everywhere. People are going to start going back indoors, and once the temperature drops, if Biden kicks a whole bunch of people out of their houses and the unemployment insurance really does run out and forces a whole bunch of people back to work, you're going to see numbers under Biden in the COVID death and infection category that dwarf what Donald Trump ever had a chance to do. Now, I'm not saying that if Trump were in office right now, he'd be doing any of a better job than Biden is, but I want to dispel the fantasy that Joe Biden is in any way better than Trump when it comes to COVID, or really when it comes to anything. So, thank a Biden voter today. Remember, they told you that the Democrats were people that could get things done. Joe Biden was a guy that could get things done. What has he gotten done? He left Afghanistan with public troops. Trump was trying to do that anyway. And if Trump were in office, he would have done exactly the same thing because the Taliban was taking over the country regardless. No, that doesn't count. All that Joe Biden has actually gotten done is helping his rich prick oligarch friends in Silicon Valley and in big oil and that work for the military industrial complex to make more money He's planning out new wars. He just got a whole bunch of, $25 billion extra dollars added to the military. He's absolutely going to spend that bombing Syria and Somalia and other places that aren't Afghanistan. He's still drone striking people in Afghanistan as well, by the way, that doesn't mean he hasn't changed his imperialism at all just because he got ground troops paid for by federal tax dollars out of Afghanistan, by the way, Kyle Kalinske. So I fail to see how we should vote Democrats. I mean, the way that I see it is, on paper, Trump and Biden are very much similar. They just have different PR teams. And Trump basically tries to ram fascism through the front door using a battering ram, all boisterous-like. And Biden's the guy that unlocks the back door and lets fascism sneak through the back door quietly. Which one do you guys prefer? So, you know what? I'm done with the duopoly. And what I'm trying to do on this show is convince you guys that no matter who's in power, the same shit, the same shenanigans keeps going down. The only difference is what mainstream media is talking about, and they flip-flop depending on who's in office. If there's a Democrat in the White House, Fox News is going to destroy them the entire time, and CNN and MSNBC are going to defend them the entire time. And then you flip it every 4 years or every 8 years, and we just shuffle the shit around. It's time we start taking care of each other, and if we don't start taking care of each other and prepping for climate change and expecting the duopoly to help us with stuff like climate change and COVID, I think we're in some deep trouble. And mark my words, and then quote me later, this winter is going to expose the Democrats so badly. If they don't do a lockdown and start paying people a UBI, the numbers that Biden's going to put up in terms of the COVID deaths are going to be astronomical. And here's what they'll do. This is just expect it. They'll demonize Republican governors. That's what they're planning on doing. They'll say, no. All the Democratic states which are more vaccinated will do slightly better in the numbers. So all the Republican governors who basically didn't try to push vaccines and stuff like that, the South is going to get hit harder with Delta variant than the North will, and the Biden administration, all the Democrats will just spend the entire time blaming it on Republican governors, and that's why the numbers are so high, and they'll point out that the southern states are doing worse than the northern states. But what they won't show you is that the northern states are also going to get wiped out. They're just not going to do quite as poorly as the southern states, and that's what drives me crazy, is that they'll just come up with a scapegoat. It's always the Republicans, so they're going to go out there and just blame people like DeSantis and Greg Abbott and all these people who are a bunch of, idiots that are absolutely killing their people. But Biden and his administration aren't doing anything to stop them. You can overrule these people. There's things that you can do. You're a president. You have Congress. You have a majority. It doesn't have to be up to the governors. If you had any type of leadership skills and a brain in your skull, which we know he doesn't, or he does, it's just full of beta amyloid plaque. That's Alzheimer's for you. He would absolutely, overrule these governors instead of leaving it up to them. But it's a tactful decision on the Democrats, is they leave it up to the governors to fumble it, which they're always going to do in the South. Once they do, they just shine a spotlight on it and go, oh, that's the reason the COVID deaths are up. That's why our nation is in so much trouble. It's really the Republican governor's fault. So that's the play. That's what they're going to do. They'll just demonize the Republican Party, even though the Republican Party doesn't have any power in Congress. And if Joe Biden had any leadership skills whatsoever, he would just get his party to vote as a block, make sure everybody votes party lines, pass legislation, do mask mandates, do a lockdown. But they're not going to do that. They're going to let hundreds of thousands of us die. Because we're just peons. We are serfs. And this is feudalism, and they're the lords and the kings. They don't give a fuck about us. So I just want you guys to realize it doesn't matter if Trump gets reelected in 2024, or Biden gets reelected, or Kamala Harris, or Amy Klobuchar, or Pete Buttigieg, or Ron DeSantis. We're still going to get the same exact outcome. And that's what I want you guys to understand. Anyway, sorry that went a little bit long. I'll post the article from Common Dreams below. Keep fighting the good fight out there. I'll talk to you later.